Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Johns Hopkins School of Education Doctor of Philosophy and Educational webinar. My name is Tanya McMillan, and I am an admissions coordinator here at the School of Education. Also joining me today, I have my colleague from the Office of Admissions, and she will introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sion John, Assistant Director of Admissions here at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
We also have presenting and joining today Vice Dean of Academic Affairs and Program Lead, Dr. Hunter Gelbach. Also joining us, Jeffrey Alexander Grigg Associate Professor, Dr. Laney John, and current PhD student, Avery Davis. Before we get started, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. First, today's webinar is being recorded. We'll be able to share a link via email with you after the event is complete. Also, please take a quick moment to ensure that your microphone is on mute right now. Also, having your video camera on during today's presentation is optional. However, please have your microphone on mute during the entire presentation. There will also be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so please type your questions in the chat box and we'll read your answers aloud as well. Next, I'd like to share the agenda for today's virtual webinar. We will begin the presentation sharing an overview of the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Then Dr. Gelbach and Dr. John will go over details of the Doctor of Philosophy program. We also have a current PhD student joining us today, and he will talk about his journey at SOE. Lastly, we will cover admission requirements and leave the floor open for questions at the end. I will begin with some quick facts about the Johns Hopkins School of Education. We are one of 9 schools at Johns Hopkins University. We began offering college courses for teachers in 1909 and then became our own school in 2007. We are proud to share that the Johns Hopkins School of Education is consistently ranked one of the top schools in education by the U.S. News and World Report. For school enrollment, we have approximately 2,437 students and offer more than 30 graduate programs, which includes doctoral, master's, and graduate certificate programs. We also have a strong network of over 22,000 SOE alums. Moving on to our faculty presenters, Dr. Hunter Gelbach is the Program Lead and Vice Dean of Academic Affairs at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. He joined SOE in 2019, received his PhD at Stanford University. His research focuses on improving the social and motivational context of schools, and he also received the Spencer Foundation Mid-Career Award in 2016. Also presenting today, we have Dr. Laney John, and she is a Jeffrey Alexander Grigg Associate Professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Dr. John received her PhD at Ohio State University. Her research focuses in early childhood education, teacher well-being, family characteristics, and neighborhood disadvantages that impact children's development, and was the AERA SRCD Early Career Fellow in Early Childhood Education and Development in 2017. And before we review the program details of the PhD program today, I would like to cover a frequently asked question. What is the difference between the EdD and the PhD programs? Well, to briefly summarize what's on this chart, our PhD program is a full-time, approximately 4 to 5 year program requiring residency in Baltimore, Maryland. Typically, the program is designed for those who are pursuing research positions or continuing research and teaching at the college or university level. There is also a strong focus towards researching and contributing new information to the field of education. On the other hand, our EdD program is a part-time online program. Completion time is approximately 3 to 4 years, and the program is designed for individuals who are practitioners within their respective fields. Most EdD programs are focused on preparing students for administrative leadership roles, The ED program also includes, but of course is not limited to, leadership in higher educational institutions, school districts, nonprofit organizations, government agencies, and private sector positions. Typically, EDD students choose to narrow their studies to something directly applicable to their current job or role they are aspiring to obtain. At this time, I'll hand the floor over to Dr. Gelbach and Dr. John to discuss the details of the PhD program. Welcome today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Tanya. It's great to be here. Can everyone hear me okay? I know I've got some fans going on in the background. Just for the record, I'm not in Baltimore. The weather's always perfect in Baltimore. I need the fans because I'm up in Vermont. So yeah, huge thanks for making it, for taking the time. Yeah, just to kind of pick up where Tanya left off, as we think about sort of the main objective of the program, you know, we do have people focused on lots of different areas of study. The main sort of default occupations, essentially, that we're training people for range from kind of faculty members to research scientist positions. So like maybe position at a research center. Typically at sort of R1 research intensive universities. But I think it's also, and sometimes nonprofits, that's maybe a little less common, but not uncommon. And I think the nuance I'd like to layer in, and Leni, you can sort of chime in and see if you would agree, is despite these sort of, you know, potentially kind of narrow sets of positions that we're training people for, I think the real way we think about it kind of here on the ground at Hopkins is really about impact, right? So are you having impact on schools, on children, on teachers? In a lot of ways, that's, you know, really what matters to us in many ways the most. So we think about research, you know, both from sort of like a theoretically interesting point of view, that's a high bar that we hold, but then also sort of what the real world impact is. So I guess you could call us greedy, right? We really want both. So that's kind of a big picture orientation. And as we shift to the next slide and think about sort of the particulars of research focus areas and disciplines that you might, you know, that might be sort of a good fit for you here at Hopkins, I think it's fair, and again, Leni, I'll let you chime in after this slide. I think it's fair to think about sort of three main buckets. So on the one hand, we're interested in a couple different disciplines. So almost all of our scholars, our students are coming either from this sort of learning sciences and educational psychology perspective, or from a sort of sociology of education kind of disciplinary background. But the goal in either case is to really be able to influence educational policy and practice. So we'll get some students who come in with much more of an ed psych background, others who come in with more of a sociology background, and then some who come in with more of a policy background or focus. And so we want to be transparent about this just right from the outset. For a lot of people, this is perfect, great fit. Not everyone, I don't think we tend to get much of anyone who has expertise or writ large across the board. That's part of why you're going to school. But, you know, if you're really interested in like history of education or curriculum studies, you know, you should think a little bit about and really meet with some faculty to figure out if it is the right fit. I know my sound is breaking up a tiny bit. Did most of that get through?
Yes, Dr. Gelbach, you're going in and out right now. I don't know if you want maybe like unmute and mute just to see if that would help.
All right, I'll try again. So very briefly, bear these disciplinary areas in mind because it's not the perfect fit for everyone, but I think for a lot of you, it'll work well. And with that, I'll hope my sound is better and turn it over to Leni.
Thank you, Hunter. So I'm going to talk about some of program features and the curriculum you'd expect from the School of Education. So our PhD program is originally designed to be a 4-year program, but we often see that students take fifth year for various reasons. So students have fully funded fellowship in up to 4 years, which include tuition coverage and a stipend, and it has some insurance up there too. For students who are taking fifth year, they typically work with an advisor or research centers to secure fifth year funding. As part of the training, students will be also required to complete 2 teaching assistantships, which is actually very helpful for students to learn teaching skills. Next slide, please. So we require a minimum of 72 credits of doctoral level coursework, and master's degree is required, and students can petition for up to 12 credits of that master's level graduate coursework towards the 72 credits. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the curriculum has 2 big parts here. So one is related to coursework, and the other part is related to students' individual research towards their dissertation. So for the coursework, as you can see on this slide, students are required to take a minimum of 18 credit hours towards research methods and statistics courses. And the methods and statistics courses we offer include a sequence of basic statistics, research landscape, and data workflow, and a range of advanced methods and statistics, including hierarchical linear modeling, structural equation modeling, and some closure analysis courses. We also require 15 core seminar credit hours. Hunter already mentioned, but we have very interdisciplinary approach in our coursework covering educational psychology, learning sciences, sociology perspectives to education policy. So our core seminars includes those courses. And then you'll see there's minimum of 21 credit hours of electives, and there's some faculty directed readings and 18 hours on dissertation research. So students are supposed to complete the comprehensive exam before the beginning of year 3. So our rising third year students completed it during this summer. So dissertation proposal defense is mostly completed during year 3 towards the end of spring semester or summer. And doctoral dissertation and oral defense are mostly completed by the end of year 4 or 5, depending on how many years students go with. Okay, next one. Yeah, I will turn this over to Hunter again.
Great. So we also sort of thought it would be useful to give you, a little bit more of a window and some insights into the types of research people are doing here at the school. And we'll have Avery come on in a sec to say more about this. But, I think as you sort of look over the list here from, sort of some social network analysis to some big data set stuff on measures of effective teaching, and so on down the list, you'll see a couple different things. So one theme actually that you don't see on the list is I think increasingly our students are really tending to do more of these kind of 3-paper dissertations rather than sort of a book model. And part of that is the disciplinary focus mentioned before. Disciplines like educational psychology are really kind of more of a journal articles sort of field than a book kind of field. And so writing a dissertation in 3 papers is in a lot of ways just kind of more pragmatic, right? You have to do less work to get those published. But I think in addition to that, what you're seeing on the list here is a real showcase of kind of the methodological diversity and flexibility. So, we've got everything here from sort of big data set, secondary analysis to original data collection, sort of represented on this list of studies. And the other thing that I'll just sort of underscore from what I said before is I hope, without too much imagination, you can really see how there's a real sort of concrete, practical impact here. So, all of these are going to be rich, theoretically grounded studies. But, something like investigation of social networks of pregnant teenagers and their effects on academic achievement. So you kind of figure out like, okay, how much of a role is someone's social network playing, for this subpopulation of students on their academic achievement? And there may be a handful of pretty practical outcomes that would come out of that. And so I think that theme of sort of the real world impact comes through pretty nicely for most of these studies. So with those studies in mind, then I think the next question, and we'll shift to the next slide for this, is great. What kind of career does that lead to?
Dr. Galbach, you're going in and out. Maybe adjust your volume a little bit. Maybe that could help because the volume's going really low too.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. There's not much I can do. There's a perennial problem. Everyone tells me this. Because I'm not in Baltimore, I don't have the external microphone. Is this any better? Can folks hear me at this point? Okay, sorry.
Yes,
I know
it sounds better. Yep, you sound
Okay.
better.
I promise I'm not doing anything different. So in terms of kind of the careers that people head into, you have the list up there, right? So a few folks going into government, nonprofit. I would say increasingly though, just to try and give you a little sense of kind of the trend of where the program is going, is the most recent graduating class. I think most of those folks ended up in postdocs. And so I think increasingly there's more of a move toward the sort of research scientist and postdoc kinds of positions, and ultimately people pursuing faculty roles and other academic types of positions. So with that, on the next slide, and I think this is sort of a fun one, we've got my top three and Leanie's top three. So much, at least from my perspective, so much of figuring out a PhD program is the fit. And so these are my sort of top three reasons, like Johns Hopkins should be a good fit for you if. And so reason number one, you're looking for an apprenticeship experience. So I think one of the real sort of signatures of the program is it's small. So we're looking on average to admit about 5 students a year. So you're going to work pretty closely with a faculty member or a couple faculty members. You do have a cohort as well. And so there's sort of a balance between those two. But I think, unlike other programs where there might be, an incoming group of 25 or 30 students, you're getting a much more intimate experience here. And, there are pros and cons to that. But I think for a lot of people, for a lot of our students, I think that's a really big draw. All right, second, this is my sort of cryptic one. You might want to learn research approaches of the future. So I think one of the things that Hopkins does particularly well is training around research methodology. And one of the things that is increasingly becoming a real signature of our program is this movement toward open science. And if that nomenclature doesn't mean much to you, no problem. The quick and dirty version of it is everyone, I assume everyone on the call probably appreciates that, when you're analyzing data, if you look hard enough for that thing you really want to find, you can find it, right? So you just run more and more analyses, and finally, just by chance alone, you pop up with something that's like kind of cool or significant or publishable. And so increasingly, kind of starting with medicine, then psychology, and easing into educational psychology now, people are really appreciating like that is not helping schools. If we report these chance findings as like real findings, that is not helping anyone who's working in a school district. And so when we say sort of learning the research approaches of the future, there are a lot of things like safeguards we can put in place that use these sort of open science practices that really facilitate guarding against these sort of chance findings getting out there in the world. So that's one piece of it. There's a big equity piece to the open science, right? So there's sort of a, better off research institutions like Johns Hopkins can, afford these crazy journal fees and have a well-stocked library, but that's not open and available to everyone. So there's sort of an open access movement to try to, make the research publications, the knowledge available, whether it's in this country or others. So this sort of openness idea behind open science is both sort of a transparency and methodology, but open access for other people to get a hold of science and knowledge. So anyway, come to Hopkins, you'll get a deep grounding in that. Third, and then we'll hear Leni's list, is you want to take advantage of research practice partnerships. So I think another big signature of the program is the fact that in many of the labs and centers, we're working very closely with educational organizations, often schools, but sometimes other sorts of educational organizations, whether it's groups that work with teachers, folks that do stuff with environmental education kinds of organizations. And so getting that sort of close hands-on experience with practitioners is something I think almost all our students really appreciate and benefit from. So those are my top three. Leni, let's kick it over to you and hear yours.
Sure. I completely agree with Hunter's top three. I'm just going to add three more there. So my first is interdisciplinary approach in School of Education. So if you're looking for an interdisciplinary approach in education, I believe that Hopkins is the really good fit. So I mentioned already about our coursework provides perspectives from learning sciences, educational psychology, sociology, educational policy, and multicultural perspectives, and other disciplines. So SOE School of Education has faculty members who have a wide range of research agenda. And this is really great for students to develop perspectives from multiple disciplines related to education. Also, at the university level, this interdisciplinary research is encouraged across the university. So there are a lot of opportunities for students to get involved in projects with faculty at other schools as well. So my second one is related to methodology and statistics training. So we have a set of rigorous methodology training in School of Education, and we have a very nice in-house statistics sequence within School of Education, which is actually good for students to learn some discipline-specific examples and data sets in education so that it's easier for students to apply to their own work. We also have students taking courses from other schools, other departments, so that they can get more diverse methodology trainings as well. So within Hopkins, within the School of Education, we have this nice in-house statistics sequence, and outside of School of Education, there are a lot of great coursework related to statistics and methodology. And especially because we have a very small group cohort, the method training becomes more interactive and personal because our class size is not that big. And in our coursework, my third point is that we talk a lot about bridging between research practice and policy. So Hunter already mentioned about taking advantage of research practice partnerships. And I would emphasize that again, because if you're interested in making impact on education policy or practice by bringing in research, this is really a good place. We also have a lot of faculty doing this type of work, connecting between research and practice or policy, and taking the research practice partnerships. So students have a lot of opportunities to work on those projects as well. Right.
All right, and here's a little blast from the past when we could actually, interact with each other from, less than more than 6 feet kind of thing. So I want to take a sec to just introduce Avery now and, give you a kind of from the horse's mouth. Here's what it's really like here. And I got to be honest, we're a little nervous about inviting Avery because he is better dressed than every single one of our faculty members all the time, but his research is so compelling that we couldn't say no. So anyway, a warm welcome to Avery, and just really excited to hear a little bit about the research you're pursuing, kind of the reasons you chose Hopkins, and what else you think students need to know. So thanks, Avery.
Thank you, Hunter. Happy to be here, happy to share and see all of you participating here today. So as alluded to, my name's Avery. I'm entering my second year here at the program. My research focuses on higher education. I use national data sets, particularly the high school longitudinal study, to look at students' entry and exit experiences with post-secondary financing. So really how financial aid and loans and other state programs and school funding interact with students as they go through that post-secondary experience. I chose Hopkins and the School of Ed for the quality faculty. My advisor is Steve Morgan. He's done a lot of work with entry and statistical modeling on attainment. But there are also folks like Bob Balfence, who's done some college readiness works after looking at how high school dropout relates to that. And so picking different things that different experts have, I think really aligns, and then you kind of bring the pieces together. I think it's one of the unique things here, since we have a lot of different folks doing different things. But also, it's been talked about before, but the quantitative focus is really important to me. Obviously working with national data sets, that's where that mends really well. I took a class with Leanie last year. So again, looking at different skill sets that people have and drawing on that. So that's kind of been one of my two main reasons for choosing Hopkins. I do enjoy the sort of cohort community. We've talked a little bit about that too, but I think that's really important because even though my whole year was online last year, I feel that my cohort members, we really work together as whether it's motivating each other or bouncing ideas off of each other. And we found ways to do that. But also the cohort above us kind of were like informal mentors for us. And I don't think a lot of programs kind of have that, but they were always willing to help and answer any questions at any time, really. So I think that's really important when you want to learn about the culture of the institution, is how the student cohorts work together. And my tips for prospective students is to explore the current research that's going on. So look at the different labs that we have and what are their current funding, the grants funding for, what are the recent papers published by faculty members to get a sense of their current interests, which might have changed over time, and then kind of reading through that to see where you might fit, where you can either branch off on to the next research questions or complement it by something you bring to the table. So I think that's really important. And also same thing with students. Student bios are on the website, so you can see what kind of research interests that broad. Like we have people doing mental health, people doing early childhood, people doing college readiness, and I think environmental ed. A lot of these different pieces come to play, and I think that also will help with your own research agenda. So with that, I think I will turn it back over.
Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful presentation. So now we're going to continue by going over the application requirements. First, applicants must submit a completed application, which can be found on our website. Keep in mind, there is an $80 application fee when you submit your application. You will also need an updated resume. A personal statement should not exceed more than 750 words. In addition to the personal statement, a writing sample must be submitted. And this would be a sample of your most professional writing that demonstrates your analytical and critical writing skills. Moving on, you should plan on submitting 3 letters of recommendation, and these letters should include at least the following: 2 submitted by faculty members who are familiar with your previous academic work, and 1 by a supervisor or administrator who has been in a position to evaluate your professional development. We will need official GRE scores and also official transcripts. And please keep in mind, we need all official transcripts, including institutions you may have taken courses but did not receive a degree. Again, this is from all post-secondary institutions that you have attended. And lastly, an interview may be required. And one more thing to note is that there is a prerequisite for this program, a master's degree from a regionally or a nationally accredited college or university. The application deadline is December 15, 2021. Please keep in mind, we will need all supporting materials submitted by this date. And this includes official transcripts, letters of recommendation, and test scores. And there are a few additional steps you need to take in order to complete the application process if you're an international student. You must submit a TOEFL or IELTS score. And please note, if you hold qualifying degrees or have earned credits from institutions outside of the United States, you must have your academic records evaluated by an accredited independent credential evaluation agency before you can be considered for admission to the PhD program. Additional information can be found on our website. And please note, all PhD students at SOE are eligible for a fellowship for up to 4 years. The fellowship includes a yearly stipend and will cover tuition and fees. The fellowship will also cover individual health, dental, and vision insurance. And lastly, you must be registered full-time and be in good academic standing every semester to continue to be eligible for the fellowship. And if you're interested in applying for financial aid, we strongly encourage you to apply for financial aid when you start your application. And please visit our website for additional information on financial aid. Thank you for attending the Doctor of Philosophy and Education virtual webinar. At this time, we would like to open up the floor for questions.
Seon, I think there's one in the chat that's probably best directed towards you around GREs.
Yes, we got a couple direct messages as well too. So I'm trying to read through the questions right now.
I will read the one about the GRE, Seon. The question is, just to confirm, the GRE is compulsory and there is no joint master's and PhD program. That is correct. The GRE is an admission requirement of the PhD program. There is not a dual master's and doctoral or PhD program that we offer.
Thank you, Tanya. The next question I got was privately messaged. Is there any possibility to have the GRE waived since I am a former student from SOE, JHU SOE, or maybe consider about the COVID-19 situation? Unfortunately, the GRE is cannot be waived. It is part of the admissions process for the PhD program.
But can you maybe also just say how long are the GREs good for? Is it 5 years? Is that right?
Yes,
That
it
is
is
correct.
5. Yes.
So if you took them to get into a master's program within 5 years, they would still be good.
Thank you, Dr. Gelbeck, for that. And then the next question we have is it required to have published papers or articles?
I can take that. No, for sure not. You know, are you a much stronger applicant? Sure, if you've got a publication or two. But, you know, part of the reason to have that writing sample in the application is so that we can, you know, get a good sense of kind of where you're at now and your potential for academic writing.
Thank you. The next question is, what is a typical day like?
I'll give a quick answer to that, but maybe Avery would be in the best position to do that, I think. You know, so I think in your first year, it's more coursework heavy. And so a typical arc of the day might be a couple classes. Maybe you have to go to a lab meeting to kind of, you know, check in and doing some work on a group research project. Probably squeezing in some readings between those. As you shift into sort of second and third year, there's a little less time spent in the classroom, and you might be doing more kind of directed reading sorts of things. So it's a little bit more independent. You're probably ramping up your responsibilities within your lab group. You may need to, at some point, you do need to kind of tick off and have 2 teaching assistant responsibilities that you do. So part of the training is, you know, we want to make sure people are well equipped to go into the classroom. And then, you know, by the time you're in that sort of 4th, 5th year, getting close to graduation, you're probably not going to any classes. You're probably just doing sort of research credits. and you're spending lots of your time doing research, and that can look a lot of different ways, right? It might be showing up at schools and collecting data. It might be sitting down with your big data set. So hard to encapsulate a typical day. But Avery, why don't you fill in? I'll be quiet and let you take it away from here.
I think that was well stated, Hunter. Especially for the first year, you're really focusing on taking the courses and successfully completing them. But I also think there's the piece of with your advisor. So for some, your advisor might want to meet with you weekly based off of your fit with each other. Others might have a lab and you're part of the lab meeting every week or every other week. So that time factors in. And then generally it's probably 1 to 2 courses a day during the first year. And then that sort of lightens up as you go along, as Hunter said. And then I think the other thing that happens typically is there's some of the just like paperwork signing off that happens early on that you might have to make sure you're maintaining your timelines on emails or deadlines and such. But I think that was covered well from Hunter's part.
Thank you, Avery. Next question we have, if the GPA needs to be converted into, I'm assuming that's a US GPA, as I am from India. So yes, just to touch on international requirements for students that may have foreign transcripts from other countries other than the US, you will have to have an official credential evaluation done by Credential Evaluation Service, and they will do a course-by-course evaluation to determine US equivalency for your GPA. That's for all undergraduate and graduate coursework if you did not attend a US-based school. The next question that we have, can you share any examples of the types of writing samples submitted in the past that are aligned to what you're looking to see? That may be a question, I guess, for Hunter and Lainey.
I'll say a couple quick things, and then I'm seeing we've got lots of messages, so we may have to start moving at a slightly higher level. But I think let me say 2 things about the writing samples and the admissions process. One is that I think the personal statement and the sort of statement of research interest is hugely important. And to me, one of the big things that's really important is to have a vision of the type of research you'd want to do, and to be able to articulate that well and the types of research questions you want to pursue. I think it's a real sort of separates wheat from chaff kind of thing if you can articulate what looks like a real research question. It might not be super narrow because you're still figuring that out. But the people who can articulate a research question as opposed to just I am interested in topic X, to me, those applications stand out. And then in terms of the writing sample that might be a publication or a term paper kind of thing that you wrote in your master's program, really to me, that's just about your potential to do good academic writing. So those are kind of the quick high level points that I'm looking for when I read applications. But Lainey, do you have a different read when you read applications?
No, I think you exactly covered all. And one more thing I wanted to add is fit. So if you have opportunity, it's great to have conversation with faculty in advance, so you can fully understand the fit before you write this personal statement. And
I think Avery hinted at this, like one of the best ways to sort of figure out fit is to peruse the website, figure out which faculty members, what their current research projects are, reach out, get in touch with them. So the more you know about sort of what you're getting into, the better from our perspective. The next question on what about scholarship for PhD program, I think you'll need to articulate a little bit more what you mean. So maybe you can pop another question in down below. In terms of the typical daily schedule, it is pretty flexible. It's going to depend on your advisor. The stipend is automatic for, pretty much everyone. I don't know that there are cases where that hasn't happened, but, I think it is possible to imagine different situations. Maybe in some instances, someone's home government is paying for them to come. So I guess in that sense, maybe it's not automatic, but pretty much everyone gets a stipend. We do get a lot of people whose background is as a classroom teacher applying. But I think, important to be clear that this is really a research-focused program. So it is classroom teachers who really want to shift into doing research. All right. And so I think it's probably useful to skip over some of the sort of more individual questions, like, here's my thing. And so I'm going to encourage you to email people later, email the admissions crew that's on the call here. But I think if we have enough questions, it's probably useful to sort of do the ones that are globally applicable. So the next one I'm seeing that sort of fits that category, alternatives to academic recommendation letters. Leni, thoughts on that?
Well, I think we had some applicants who provided letters from supervisors in their job, especially if the job was in research-related organizations. So what we really look for from recommendation letter is whether the applicant is ready to be in this academic program. So somebody who can speak about readiness for research, that I think that would be great.
And I might just add, it's probably a little risky to go outside academic, to not have any academic recommendation letters. So if you don't have sort of a former faculty member who you're close to and can speak to your sort of potential as a researcher, I would probably try to get as close as you can. Question about whether the School of Ed maintains a relationship with BCPS or local school districts. Those are really mostly maintained on a sort of faculty member by faculty member basis, or a center. So there's not, like at the School of Ed, except for our partner school, Henderson Hopkins, which is a local elementary school. There's not official School of Ed kinds of relationships. It's more like this center has a particular relationship, or this faculty member has a particular relationship. Yeah, for transcripts, we do want to see bachelor's and master's transcripts. Sorry, it's getting hard to scroll through everything.
The next question we have is, so when a student enters the program, they are on a general grounds. Specialization occurs when we start dissertation.
Yeah, Leni, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to read this again. So usually what happens is that even before you start the program, we have advisor-advisee match. So you'll have pretty clear ideas in terms of what kind of research projects you're gonna work on. So if specialization means your research interest, research agenda, then you really start that from the first year, and you start to build off of your research dissertation ideas by working with your advisor or different research centers, wherever fit happens. So first year, second year, you have pretty heavy coursework, but still you will develop your dissertation ideas.
Great, thanks, Leni. A couple of questions about international students. There's certainly no set number. So we're a total blank slate. If we had all international students, that would be fine. If we didn't have any, that's also possible. The fellowship situation for international students is exactly the same as for local students. So the question on sort of COVID and are there sort of distance online possibilities for the PhD program? There aren't at this point, and Hopkins is very hopeful that we're going back in person full on this semester. So keep your fingers crossed. We hope that plays out. So it really is an in-person program. Right, what's next here?
The next one I'm seeing, because we have some direct messages as well too.
Right.
One is, what are some career paths your graduates have pursued?
Yeah, I think we talked about that. And like I was saying before, between the sort of government sector, nonprofit, what we're really seeing more of now is sort of research scientists, postdoc, and academic faculty sorts of positions. And I think that trend will probably continue moving forward. All right, we talked about Baltimore City Public Schools.
I'm seeing the next one is, may I ask how many students will be admitted into the PhD program in the coming year?
Yeah, good question. So again, we're sort of targeting 5. And I think, in any given year, we might get a couple extra great applicants that we're interested in. So there's some flexibility, but 5 is kind of the ballpark number.
We also have a question about admit acceptance rates. So overall, the average application pool is around 68. This is for fall 2021 data. And then our admit rate is about 6%. And that's based on fall 2021. Let's see what other questions we have. There was a question I saw earlier, I'm not sure if we touched on it, about whether both the bachelor's and master's transcripts are required. And yes, they are. All post-secondary transcripts, that would be undergraduate and graduate, are required. Even if a degree was not earned, if you took, for example, community college credits somewhere, we would need those transcripts as well. So any post-secondary college transcripts are required, and they do have to be official transcripts sent directly to our admissions office.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I really like this question about, if I'm coming into the program from sort of a cross-disciplinary angle, but not necessarily ed psych or policy practice or sociology of education, is that a good fit? And I think it could be, right? So I think a lot of advisors like to be stretched by their advisees and kind of learn new things and have a different take. So you need to think about, in the world of overlapping Venn diagrams, you need to have some overlap with your advisor. And that could be in the sort of practical problem you're pursuing. But it doesn't have to be the sort of disciplinary overlap. Now, that said, odds are you're going to be in a cohort that does have a fair bit of expertise in either educational psychology or sociology of education or policy. And so there may be, if you're coming from anthropology or applied linguistics, there might be a little catch up that you're having to do to kind of get grounded in some of these other disciplines, but it's certainly possible. And again, just depends on sort of, I would say, kind of finding other fits with a potential advisor.
Thank you. The next question we have is, between the stipend and faculty TA positions, what would you estimate as the annual salary?
So the fellowships, the fellowship stipend is $28,000 annually.
And a follow-up question from the writing sample question. Does it matter how long ago the writing sample came from? Is there an expiration date?
I don't think that matters hugely. We certainly assume that you're not going to if you had this knowledge and this capacity to write that well 7 years ago, we don't assume that you've lost it. So I wouldn't worry about how long ago your writing sample came from. We don't assume atrophy of knowledge. Oh, good question for Avery here. Were you always sure about your dissertation topic, or did the 2 years here impact the decision?
Yeah, that is a good question. And I would say no. I think what I wrote in my application, broadly, it was always about higher education and access questions, but it got refined after the first year, and I'm sure it'll get refined again as I go on. But eventually it'll be something, as my advisor describes, I'll be an expert in something and be able to add to that conversation.
And I really like this question because I feel like I see a lot of students come in with like a very clear, focused interest. And then that first year kind of like blows it out of the water and they start getting interested in all sorts of other things. And then other students come in, you know, much less focused, interested in lots and lots of stuff. And then that first year, maybe more often the second year, can really kind of focus them in. And I think, you know, there are a lot of different pathways to sort of doing the PhD really successfully. And I think the only people I would really worry about are the ones who, on the one hand, maybe come in super, super focused, and then they're just so focused on that one little area that they don't kind of fully take advantage of and explore some of what the other faculty members and the other disciplines have to offer. And then some folks who, if they're into like halfway through their third year and haven't found a focus, you know, that's tough too. But kind of anything in between those two extremes works pretty well. Leni, would you add anything to that?
No, I just wanted to add, a lot of final papers in the coursework are designed to help students refine research questions. So most of final projects are designed to work towards their own research questions. So there are a lot of opportunities throughout first, second, even third year to refine your research interest and questions.
Okay, our next question that we have, it looks like it's an international based question. Can we do research in our home country of Macedonia? For example, how international can the program be for us?
Yeah, so I like the spirit of that question. And for sure, as international as you want it to be, with the caveat that, you know, you need to get an advisor who's sort of on board with that. And so presumably, like, I don't happen to, Leni may know otherwise, I don't happen to know any of our faculty members who are like, you know, have projects going on in Macedonia. But if the sort of like educational psychology angle or the questions that are being asked about sociology of education are really interesting, I think it might easily be that you could get someone excited about research that happens to happen in Macedonia. So that's where that sort of theoretical piece of the research project would come in. So again, you know, depends on the advisor, is sort of very international, but depends on the advisor, I think, is the answer to that one. Leni, anything to add on that? Because you've done more international work than I have.
Yeah, we definitely do international research. I've been collecting data from South Korea, and also I'm building a new project with my PhD student in China as well. So it really depends on what kind of network you have in home country and how much support fit you have with advisor.
Okay, thank you, Hunter and Leni. Next question that we have, is it possible to apply for both the EdD and PhD just in case we're not selected for the PhD? We do get that question often. Unfortunately, no, you cannot apply for 2 doctoral programs within the same cohort year. So you'd have to select one or the other. You're certainly welcome to apply to a following cohort year if you don't get selected for the program that you're seeking.
With that though, I would just underscore that they're pretty different things. Like, it would be a little surprising to me if there were a lot of people who are like really interested in both. You know, not out of the question by any stretch of the imagination, but the two experiences are quite different. And so the people who are really passionate about doing sort of, you know, publishable research and really building the knowledge base of the discipline, and the people who are really interested in solving a sort of practical problem at their school or state or district level, those tend to play out fairly differently. So again, not out of the question that someone might be, pretty excited and interested in both pathways, but just to underscore that they are pretty different experiences.
Next question we have, are there any examples of projects that have had tangible impacts on education?
Yeah, I think tons. I mean, so I've only been here since 2019, and one of the ones that really sort of caught my eye from afar from my prior institution was this sort of like painfully simple, at least on the surface, work that Bob Slavin, who just recently passed away, he and his lab group were doing, where they realized that a big barrier to learning for a lot of students was they didn't have glasses. They couldn't see the board. And so they collaborated, and this speaks to some of what Leni said about the interdisciplinary nature at Hopkins. They collaborated with folks over at the Wilmer Eye Institute, got some funding, got glasses for kids. And lo and behold, it turns out that when you can see the board, you can learn more. So super practical impact, Baltimore City Public Schools. To me, just a great story, but then also like kind of interesting, because you think, wow, how simple could it be? And it turns out like, well, kids lose their glasses and break them, and then getting new glasses in place and on the kid's face is harder than you think it should be. So there is a lot of, and that's, I think, again, there are other PhD programs you could apply to that just want to build the knowledge base and just do kind of research for research sake. And no slight against them. That's a great fit for a lot of people. But there's a whole level of sort of being in the weeds and figuring some of this stuff out. Like, how do you actually get kids to be wearing glasses that we do embrace here at Hopkins? And so this, again, combination of sort of, is it theoretically rich? Is it building the knowledge base? And does it have practical on the ground impact? I think it's huge. Leni, let me flip it over to you. Do you have a sort of favorite example? Feel free to include your own research.
I've been thinking about one of my PhD student, Judy Miller's work. She actually developed an app which help understand students' emotions daily. So there are very simple 2 questions that students are supposed to choose every day, and the data are fed to teachers' dashboards so teachers can understand those data patterns. And she developed it last year. Now we disseminated that app to more than 17 schools in the US and even outside of the US. So that's one of the examples that our students are doing, like connecting between research and practice.
I think we're getting very low on time here, but there's a great final question. How do you come up with that research question that turns into your dissertation question? Definitely collaborative. At the end of the day, it is your dissertation, but if your advisor and the other couple people who are advising the research project have big issues, like, you want to take that into account. And it may be that one way to take that into account is to shift up who you actually end up working with. So definitely a collaborative decision. And, it's got to be something you're passionate about. It can't be your advisor's project. But it does get tougher if you don't have a fair bit of buy-in from your advisor. Just want to say two final things. One is, I know there were a handful of questions that we didn't quite get to, or that were more sort of individual level questions. Please do follow up with those. We don't mean to be ignoring you, but they were coming sufficiently fast and furious that we had to prioritize a little bit. And second, just huge thank you for taking the time. I realize it's a big decision and you guys are all super busy people. So we really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you about the School of Ed here and what it has to offer. And hopefully this gives you a pretty clear and candid sense of what's going on here. Do feel free to follow up with any questions that you might have. And thanks so much for coming.
Yes, thank you again, everyone, for your interest in the Johns Hopkins School of Education. We look forward to hearing from you. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.